lapel to the hand that is wrapped around his neck.
Tira a mão, apoio o tatame e vou virando.
Once I do that, I'm going to bring my hand back
Qual a
to
minha finalidade?
control his hip, and I start going around his
Aqui desse lado da
face
Mas às vezes antes
on a north-south position until I get my head on the other side of his hip on the mat. And that way I put pressure on my opponent's neck for the choke.
Cabeça fica nessa posição.
So I go on the tip of my toes to put more pressure on that choke. Some opponents may have a strong neck and it's hard to choke them, but if I keep going around, the more around I go, the more pressure I put on my opponent's neck, and I hug his head too.
muito folgado, tá muito solto.
At this point in time, my gi is really tight on my opponent's neck and will for sure
Bate.
be choked.
Lateral do adversário.
From side control, I have one arm around my opponent's neck and one right by his hip. And then I'm gonna go look for my gi lapel, the tip of my gi lapel. And then I grab my opponent's knee to have a little bit more control until my next step. Then after that, I'm gonna try to feed the gi lapel to my other hand around his neck. And if he tries to defend, I force it right through. And then once I feed the gi lapel to the hand that is going around his neck, I'm gonna start coming around my opponent toward his head.
Agora vamos fazer
Now I'm going to show you how to practice the wrist lock from when your opponent grabs your gi lapel. So what I do, I grab his wrist with one hand and then I pull it in, and then at the same time I grab with my other hand behind his elbow, and then I put both of my hands together on his elbow and try to drive my head downward, putting pressure on the wrist. Be careful when you do this because you may hurt your opponent just practicing it. Look.
E sempre quando fizer essa posição, segurou.
As long as you grab your opponent by the wrist and then bring both hands behind his elbow and pull his elbow toward you, toward your chest, and then bring your head down,
A cabeça sempre fica pro lado contrário.
you will always keep your head inside, not outside the arm. And for sure you'll put pressure on that wrist for the finish. Observe. Okay, now from the north-south control,
Mobilizando o adversário.
I'm going to control my opponent by bringing my legs back, and then I'm going to close him in. And at the same time, I'm going to trap my opponent's arms, both arms.
Mobiliza o adversário.
So once I control my opponent's arms, all I want to do is to bring one of my legs on top of his head and switching my base at the same time. I'm going to drop back to my side. Bringing my opponent's legs with me, I bring my leg around his body and finish him with an arm lock. From the north side control, I want to control my opponent's arms, both of them. So I trapped his arms by hugging them together. I want to make sure that I have a good grip on my hands too. I'm going to bring one of my legs around his head, and by switching my base, I'm going to drop back to my side. And then I bring my leg around my opponent's body, and then I stretch his arm for an arm lock. From the knees, I want to come and grab my opponent's gi collar by coming across with my hand. And then my other hand is going to go right in the back of his head. And I'm going to put weight with my shoulders on his shoulders. Then I'm going to bring my head in between his body and my body.